Hi folks, welcome to your mwis Friday Planner in association with Ellis Brigham. I've had some interesting times already as we've started this winter season, and there is some further wintry weather ahead in this next week with generally cold air masses influencing the country. Various areas of low pressure will bring some further, possibly extensive snowfalls across the hills and mountains, and again the risk of gales or severe gales at times. Let's start to build the picture then of where things are going. I'll run through the freezing level chart for the week ahead first of all to set the scene on that. And as we go overnight into Saturday, another cold front is coming around from the west and the freezing level will tend to drop across all regions, maybe even below 600 metres for parts of Scotland, with some fresh snowfall falling to some lower slopes in places, and we're down to around 800 metres or below across England and Wales as well, and that's more or less where it will stay, in that sort of 600 to 800 metre range through Saturday daytime. In some spots though, snow could well fall and lie to lower levels than that if it becomes more organised. Heading overnight into Sunday, and temperatures drop to freezing across many northern valleys and glens, not quite so cold across Wales. But it's a cold day ahead for Sunday, with much terrain staying frozen to lower levels. The freezing level at around 600 to 800 metres for the South Pennines and Wales. Again, a frost is likely soon on Sunday evening and night for most places, so we drop to freezing or below in many northern valleys and glens, and also across some parts of Wales. And then some interesting conditions into Monday, as that cold air that's in place is then bumped into by another front coming in from the Atlantic, with the prospect of some snow on that, with the freezing level maybe down below 400 metres well onwards through the daytime. Some rise towards 800 metres around the west coast of Scotland and in Wales, as just some milder Atlantic air gets in for a time. A complicated outlook into the middle of the week, but staying on the generally cold side. Another area of low pressure is expected to spin its way up, that again running into cold air, and the prospect for some further snow will skip on fairly quickly through midweek. There will be some variation of temperature and freezing level day to day, but rarely getting above around 700 or 800 metres in Scotland, and only temporarily above 800 metres elsewhere, I suspect, through the middle of the week. And even towards Friday and next weekend, that generally colder air stays around across the country, and perhaps freezing levels lower again. So the prospects for quite an interesting week of weather ahead, with some further extensive snowfalls. Let's have a look at the synoptic charts. This is Saturday, with low pressure over the North Sea and a general northwesterly flow across the country. Winds up to gale force, particularly across England and Wales, at times across Scotland as well, although possibly something of a lull occasionally here. But just watch out for variations through the day and some sudden changes to stronger winds across parts of northern Scotland at times. Generally a showery day, and those showers quite heavy at times, with some hail and thunder and some snow on the higher ground across the western parts of the country. That running well inland across into the Pennines and the Peak District at times too, with some heavy clusters of showers coming in, and maybe just wrapped around that low, even the front could just bring some snowfall into north and eastern Scotland across the hills at times. Even at this stage, that's not an easy one to pin down, and the idea of some snow from overnight still falling first light across the Highlands is believable. Now, this model chart I'm showing here is maybe one of the more pessimistic in terms of where it puts the extent of snow across the Highlands. It has more than some models that do. It has the general idea of lots of showers around western coasts, but it does just suggest that there is the risk of some snow drifting southwards from central Scotland into the borders, the Cheviots, and possibly even that zone getting a bit further into the North Pennines as we head onwards through the day. So maybe a cluster here that has snow a bit more widely for a time. There's a possibility that that only is just a few areas of showers, so bear in mind some local variations across the country. Onwards into Sunday, and pressure begins to build a little bit out to the west, and things quieten down, particularly across western Scotland. A strong northerly wind at first will ease as time goes on across much of the western Highlands, but it stays a rather blustery and cold day across the Pennines, the Lake District and Wales. Again, winds will tend to drop slowly through the day. Some showers in West Wales. We have remnants of fronts out toward the north and east of Britain, and that brings the scope for some snow at times across northeast Scotland, across the hills, and also maybe onto the eastern side of the Pennines and the Cheviots, with some snow and some sleet lower down, maybe turning a bit more to rain and drizzle with time, and then that front just sort of fading out, so maybe just a zone of cloud down the Pennines, a bit brighter toward the western side of the Pennines and the lakes. Now, things move on quite quickly as we head onwards into Monday, as that brief window of high pressure is closed by another low and a front coming in from the Atlantic. Now this, as we mentioned, is running into that cold air that will have been in existence overnight into Monday, and that's the prospect then some extensive upland snowfall across much of Britain as we go through Monday daytime. That temperature will come up, as we saw, from the west with time, so across more western coastal hills and mountains, turning more to sleet and rain, to increasingly higher levels with time, but the risk at least of some snow to quite low levels across more eastern hills for a lengthy part of the day. As that front then moves quickly eastwards, it will be replaced by showers from the west. That was quite heavy, with the risk of hail and thunder coming into western hills and mountains later on in the day. A windy day then for many places, the risk of gales quite widely across the country. Things changing again as we head onwards into Tuesday. Developing from the southwest is another area of low pressure. This looks quite a very deep and active feature. The remnants of Monday's front has more or less gone off into the North Sea. Maybe a lull then in between systems, where actually some places get a good day out of Tuesday, particularly across Scotland, maybe even northern England, but we've got to watch how soon this next oncoming low moves in, and deteriorating conditions for gales, maybe stormy winds as that low approaches, and advancing precipitation as well. That, again, starting off as snow to quite low levels, turning wetter with time as it comes in. At this stage then, carefully watching timing for Tuesday, exactly how soon that low approaches. By the middle of the week, the indication is that that low is centred somewhere just to the southwest of Britain. Eventually will drag its way off into Europe, but it will rotate around for a while in a bit of a washing machine effect, with various fronts just circulating the low, and these producing some areas of upland snow, some rain or sleet maybe in places lower down, and generally windy conditions. The wind flow coming in from the east by this stage across many regions. Could be gale force quite widely. Exact detail by the middle of the week is uncertain, but just expect a windy picture with further upland snowfalls. Now this chart is how one of the forecast models shows lying snow on the ground as we go through next week. We begin with most of it across the Highlands, bits and pieces across England and Wales, across the high tops. This model doesn't see every single hill in its resolution, so it maybe is quite patchy in just being able to see some of those pockets on the high tops in the lakes and Wales. But as we roll things on, as we go through Monday daytime, that snow does appear widely then, as we mentioned, coming in across England and Wales to quite low levels. It tops up across the Highlands as well. If we take things on through the week, we'll see how there's a little bit of back and forth in terms of where the snow is expected to be, but across many of the hills and mountains of Britain, it's going to stay there for a good part of the week. Maybe just diminishes a touch through the middle of the week for a time in places, but across the higher Pennines, the lakes, it's not really going anywhere, across the Welsh mountains too. And if anything, by the end of the week, it starts to fill back in again, as there's a prospect for further areas of low pressure bringing some more snowfalls. It's going to be quite complicated then at the back end of the week, but the general idea of low pressure being nearby and perhaps a few further centres running through the system as well. As we then head through next weekend, it appears that the next set of lows will pass a bit further to the north and pressure builds a little bit from the southwest, that then opening the door to some milder air for a time as we head probably onwards into the start of the following week as well. But it's going to be a battle then that takes place, I suspect, for a few days, where some milder air comes in for a time, but colder air dragged in from the south of Greenland across the North Atlantic comes back in to give some rather chillier and showery conditions at times, with the prospects from snow and some hail, and still very windy conditions with deep areas of low pressure, perhaps even stormy at times across more northern areas of Britain, and further areas of low pressure trying to come in from the Atlantic as well. Finally, just to give some indications as to how things may pan out running toward the Christmas period. Now, I suspect we've got this rather unsettled Atlantic regime that gets in for a while as we go into early next week. Low pressure then to the north and west of us, but higher pressure shows some signs of starting to build from the south with time, and that may become more extensive as we go onwards through to the week up to Christmas. This modelling then shows higher than average pressures in the vicinity of the British Isles, so the jet stream is away from us by this stage, and maybe fair frosty conditions getting into the picture. That is the early indications for the run up to Christmas. I can't promise exact detail at this stage, but the suggestion of quieter weather starting to develop, but until we get there it's rather unsettled for another week or 10 days at least. Stay up to date with us then every day on the mwis website. That is your Friday planner in association with Ellis Brigham. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.